So I've been going about my day and I've started receiving messages and what have you about people responding to my Shakur Stevenson video. People taking exception to what I said. So I log into YouTube and I have a quick glance at some of the comments that people are leaving. And I have to say, the video got a far greater response than I expected, to be honest with you. I didn't think it would get that much of a response. It's obviously divided people heavily. It's got like 50-50 thumbs up and thumbs down. Some people agreeing with what I'm saying, other people vehemently disagreeing. Let me just address the people who are disagreeing with what I said in that video. Now, a lot of those people, judging by the comments, haven't actually listened to the video. They've just looked at the title and made a snap judgment about what they think my stance is on the issue. And they seem to believe that just looking at the title, not listening to the video properly or understanding what I said in the video, they seem to believe that I'm saying that Shakur Stevenson's a pussy, basically, and anybody who cries in public is a pussy. This seems to be where some people are coming from, who clearly haven't listened to what I said in the video. Obviously, I'm not saying that crying in public makes you a pussy because of losing a boxing match. Many fighters have done it. The point I was making in the video, and the point I'm going to make again here, is that in my experience, the fighters who reach the highest heights and have the greatest longevity are fighters who have emotional control. Some people feel emotion more strongly than other people. This is a fact. As I confessed in the previous video, I'm not a particularly emotional person and never have been. I don't feel emotions as strongly as some other people do. So for somebody like me, it's easier for me to control my emotions because my emotions are not as strong. And I pointed out some fighters who seem to be like that. Lennox Lewis was a notoriously unemotional fighter. Very little outward signs of, sadness or even passion from him most of the time. He was notoriously ice cold, Lewis. And that's one of the things, my argument is that's one of the things that worked for him. Because he was so cold. Holyfield was similar. Another guy who was cold. Now you get these people telling me, Hatman, you don't understand what it's like to be passionate about something. That's why you're saying these things about Shakur Stevenson. Because you don't understand what it's like to work hard and not achieve. No, that's not true. Are you saying that Lennox Lewis or Evander Holyfield or Amir Khan or Gennady Golovkin, are you saying these guys weren't passionate about boxing when they were in the Olympics and lost? Lewis lost in the Los Angeles Olympics. Are you saying they weren't passionate? Because they weren't crying in public. If they did cry, it was behind closed doors. And again, that's where emotional discipline comes into it. So this idea that if you don't cry in public, it means you don't care and you're not passionate, that argument don't have any legs. Guys like Holyfield and Lewis, etc., they were clearly very passionate about the sport because of the fact that they were able to compete at the highest level in boxing for so many years. You can't do that if you're not passionate. They just weren't people who were overly emotional and or they were people who had great control over their emotions. And I have to reiterate, those are the kind of fighters who last the longest in this sport. Again, I'm not saying, and I didn't say in the first video, if you actually listened, that Shakur Stevenson's future is doomed because he cried at the Olympics. Hell no. But I'm just looking at telltale signs psychologically for a fighter moving forward. When I see a guy like Amir Khan, for example, or any young fighter in the position that Stevenson was in, who loses but still holds it together emotionally, to me, that's a good sign. And again, you know, some people are pointing certain things out about Khan. That's fair enough. But for this example, just look at him at the Olympics. That's a good sign. Or anybody in that position, Lennox Lewis, any of these guys who went to the Olympics, Triple G, and they lose, the fact that they can hold it together shows emotional control. And that is something which is vital in the sport of boxing. Emotional control. It is something you can learn. It is a skill you can cultivate. But if you have it naturally, if you have it inherently, that's even better. That's one less thing that you have to tick off and learn. So this is my position. I'm not trying to clown Shakur Stevenson or nothing like that. I'm just saying that in my experience, the more emotionally disciplined fighters tend to have the edge, because when you reach the higher echelons of boxing, the upper echelons, the skill level between most fighters and the physical ability is so close that there's very little to split them. So it often comes down to who's better mentally and emotionally, who's stronger mentally and emotionally. That's what it often comes down to at the highest level, because there's very little to split people often. And the fighter who has the better emotional control is going to be the guy that has the edge in most situations. Somebody mentioned that Tyson Fury has cried in public before after fights. He has. He cried tears of joy, a few tears. I mean, it wasn't out and out blubbing the way Shakur Stevenson was, after the Klitschko fight. And he also cried after the John McDermott fight, which to me, that was more understandable when Fury cried after the John McDermott rematch, because of the fact it was such an extremely torrid fight for him. Very torrid fight. Probably lost a hell of a lot of water weight, took a lot of punches. You know, it was a difficult situation. Nonetheless, I understand him crying more there than Stevenson after the Olympics, but nonetheless, I've always said that Tyson Fury's lack of emotional stability is one of the reasons why I don't see Tyson Fury having a long career at the top. The other reason is his lack of physical stability. And by that, I mean the fact that he fluctuates in weight all the time. When you combine his fluctuations in weight with his emotional instability, to me, that is a recipe for, I don't want to say disaster, because he's already achieved a lot of great things in boxing, but I don't see somebody with those type of traits as lasting very long at the top of the sport and having the kind of longevity of your Holyfields, Lennox Lewis, Bernard Hopkins, etc. Even Klitschko, Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko, for that matter, were prototypical when it comes to these Eastern European / former Soviet fighters. People say they're like robots. Now, Vladimir is not the bravest guy in the world, but at the same time, there is a coldness to him. And same with Vitaly, there's a coldness to these guys. I already mentioned Triple G Golovkin, Sergei Kovalev. All right, I'm sure there are some Soviet fighters who are outwardly emotional and whatnot, but for the most part, these guys are cold. That's how they are, and I think that's an advantage that they have, being cold like that. It doesn't mean that the cold guy always wins every fight, no. But in my experience, more often than not, the cold guy, the emotionally cold and controlled and calculated guy, when he's matched against somebody of similar skill and ability and fitness and whatnot, he is usually the guy that comes out on top. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Stevenson's a pussy or this, that. I ain't saying none of that. Maybe the title of the video upset people, but, listen to the actual video. Listen, you can't get your entire point across in a video title. That's why that video was like 25 or 30 minutes long, wherever it was, because it took a while to get across all my points. So please take those in first before you get offended and start, accusing me of saying things or whatever, which I never actually said. Yeah. So yeah, that's just to clarify my points on Shakur Stevenson I hope he has a great career and a great future and all that type of stuff. I just feel as though emotional control is needed, to get the best out of himself. Don't let them see you weak. And again, people are saying it's not a sign of weakness if you cry. Well, that's all down to personal opinion, isn't it? What I'm telling you is many fighters will see that as a sign of weakness when they're looking at Shakur Stevenson. They will. Whether you wouldn't see it as a sign of weakness is irrelevant, because some fighters will see it as a sign of weakness and they'll try and manipulate that and take advantage of it. Any type of emotion for that matter. Even if it's anger, if a fighter shows extreme anger, loses his cool, there'll be other fighters out there who look at that as a sign of weakness and try and take advantage of it. I already made a video about this a year or so ago when Anthony Joshua had an interview on IFL TV and they asked him about Dillian Whyte. And he snapped at Kugan Cassius. And I said at that point in time, that right there could be a sign of weakness. That right there could be something that his opponents use against him. And Anthony Joshua seems to have addressed that, because since that time, when they asked him about Dillian Whyte, he was more cool about it. And he understood that he needs to control his emotions. He can't let things get under his skin. He can't rise to the bait like that. Clever opponents will play on your emotions. Bernard Hopkins was always a master of noticing weaknesses in his opponent psychologically and then trying to exploit them. He was a master of that. The one person it didn't work with was Sergey Kovalev, or one of the people it didn't work with. Because Kovalev is cold as ice. Good luck trying to get under his skin. So, yeah, that's my stance on the issue, people. I hope some of you now understand it. That's where I'm coming from. And there's nothing that I've heard from anybody or any comment that I've read or any response which has changed my view. This is my view. I think you're better off having emotional control and not being one. And if you are one of these emotional people, again, some people are more emotional than others. If you are one of these emotional people, in the examples I've given, these guys tend to burn out quicker than the less emotional guys. Sorry. It is what it is. Drop your comments in the comment section below, people. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.